All right, Broncos country, Thursday night. J.K. Dobbins spoke on Thursday. He's off to a good start this year. The Broncos have run the ball pretty well so far this season. Are they going to continue doing that? Are they going to be committed to it? Because, of course, last year in Los Angeles, that's where Sean Payton wrote, "Run it," on the play sheet. And he stuck with it for a little while and then got away from it. Will the Broncos stay with the run if they get the chance on Sunday against a team in the Chargers that hasn't really stuck with the run since they let go of J.K. Dobbins? We're going to dive into that and more on this edition of Denver Football After Dark. Had to call back to last year, by the way, with the zoom into that play sheet there. Run it! And 3 exclamation points for good measure. It worked for a little while, and then they got away from it. Partially because they were throwing the football well in the first half of that game last December at SoFi Stadium. But it proved to be a little bit of fool's gold, as it turned out. And see, that's kind of a key thing here. You're going to want to control the tempo of this game. And the way the Broncos' defense has been lately, you're going to want to keep the Chargers' offense off the field. So it behooves you a bit to run it and stick with it and keep it going. And that's just something I was thinking about today. And thinking about as I heard J.K. Dobbins, who did have a chat with a few of us in the media on Thursday. He was in good spirits. J.K. Dobbins is pretty much always in good spirits. He's one of the more jovial guys in the Broncos locker room. Always upbeat. Like, you know, him and Malcolm Roach are two of the guys who often have smiles on their faces. And was asked if revenge is on his mind. He said no. He's pretty magnanimous about it. And let's actually play one of the comments here, because he did talk about the oddity of the Chargers putting an unrestricted free agent tag on him. It's a seldom used protocol. And what it basically means is that if nobody had signed him before training camp, that the Chargers would have had exclusive negotiating rights after that point. But as it turned out, the Broncos signed him, and then he became a Denver Bronco. So it was a little bit of a complication, but not too much. And if J.K. Dobbins had any hard feelings about it, he wasn't letting him show.
Well, they did, but yeah,
Okay.
of course. But we just didn't see eye to eye, and business is business. They did what they had to do. I did what I had to do, and so yeah, I wouldn't say they absolutely wanted me, but we just didn't see eye to eye business wise. So that's where that's at. Like, no, they didn't. No, yeah.
Is that salary or pretty much? Or,
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
something like that.
Okay.
I mean, he says they wanted him, and I mean, they did put the UFA tag on him, but they signed Najee Harris, and they drafted Omarion Hampton. I mean, at that point, there's no room at the inn. I mean, number 3 back, I mean, there wasn't going to be room for him. I mean, they'd moved on. They'd said, they were dating other people, basically. They gave him that tag, but they were basically saying, hey, we're not that into you. And the Broncos were. Broncos are pretty happy with J.K. Dobbins so far. By the way, J.K. Dobbins with 139 rushing yards, he is out rushing Najee Harris and Omarion Hampton combined. Certainly Omarion Hampton, first round pick, ballyhooed coming in, was somebody certainly I liked coming into the draft process. I thought he'd make a lot of sense. But so far has not yet launched for the Chargers. He's right now at 3.1 yards per carry. You take Hampton and Harris, and you're going to come, in terms of rushing yards, still 34 yards short of where J.K. Dobbins stands alone for the Broncos so far this season. Broncos running game, 8th in the league in DVOA, in rushing DVOA. It's a bit lower in terms of success rate and EPA per play. They're certainly in success rate, they're hindered by work in the first game that was subpar for 3 quarters. They're digging out of it. The other thing that I wanted to kind of take a look at as well, to go back to the run the ball mantra that was in last year's game. So I wanted to sort of take a look and say, okay, how are the Broncos in terms of running the ball? Are they doing it more frequently, less frequently? First of all, you can't really do pure run-pass ratio. I mean, it's an easy thing to do. But, you got game situation and all that. So first thing I wanted to do was look to see, okay, what's the run-pass ratio on 1st and 10 in the first half of games, and then in the second half of games when it's within 1 score either way. So for every first half snap, and every first half 1st and 10 snap, and every second half 1st and 10 snap when it's within 1 score, so 8 points in either direction. And the leading team in terms of so the leading team in terms of running the ball so far this season is, as we go through it here, the Philadelphia Eagles, who are running it just over 68% of the time. And the Broncos right now, they are somewhere in the middle. They're in the middle right now. They are actually 16th in the league. So they are average right now. They are running the football an average of 51.9% of the time on 1st and 10 situations in the first half, and in the second half when it's 1 score either way. And then if you look at second down situations, and the same thing, first half plus second half 1 score either way, and I looked at second down and 1 to 7 yards. In other words, you're talking about staying on schedule. This is where the Broncos actually are among the teams that runs less often than most of the teams. The Broncos in this case only run the ball, or they pass the ball 62.1% of the time. So they are running the ball 37.9% of the time. That puts them 23rd in the league in that situation. So in that case, they've run 11 times and they've passed 18 times. So they're below. So they are right about average in terms of how often they run the ball so far this season. 1st and 10, first half plus second half within 1 score, and on schedule for second downs, they are below average. So, in other words, first down, they're reasonably committed to the run. They're not overly committed, but they're not falling behind. Second down on schedule, they could stand to run the football a little bit more, especially considering how effective they are at doing so. Like I said, 8th in the league in rushing DVOA. J.K. Dobbins, his average per carry, 4.6 yards. That is the same average per carry that he had last year. And that actually led to some pretty high praise from Adam Troutman. And actually, the question I asked Adam Troutman, one of the questions I asked Adam Troutman on Thursday was, in talking about the running game, which is off to a much better start than it was last year, I asked him, okay, sort of what's helping this stronger start to the ground game? Are we talking about it being a product of the guys up front being together? Because, of course, the offensive line is intact from last year to this year. Most of those guys have been around 2 years in a row. And that includes Adam Troutman as well. He is the tight end who's played the most snaps so far this season. So you've got guys who've been together. They know what they're doing. So is it that? Is it the new running backs? Sort of what's helping bring this together so far for a ground game that's been, especially ever since the fourth quarter of the Tennessee game, it's been pretty effective. It's trending in the right direction. Here's Troutman answering that question.
I think it's both. The people or the running backs. Obviously, we're better than that position group now. JK's. I mean, when he's always healthy, I mean, he might be a top 5 back in the league, or he's really good. So very, very talented. And then RJ's obviously a little different in style, but he's been great for us as well, and so is Tyler Bidet. So. Yeah, that's huge. And then scheme. We've continued to evolve over the years. I know guys talked about it all preseason, the evolution of outside zone and incorporating more of that, getting the defense to move more laterally and all that. So it's definitely both things.
Little of column A and a little of column B coming in. And then, of course, he mentioned the wide zone principles coming in. And we'll see the true effect of that over the long haul. That's something that I've talked about, that we're really not going to see just how impactful wide zone is until we get midway through the season and we really see it starting to take. Of course, the other thing to throw in there is a stat that I think I may have mentioned either on a previous OBT or this, and the run block win rate through 2 games. Denver's offensive line, not number one like it was last year. We'll see where it goes rest of the season. It's 10th in the league in run block win rate, according to ESPN Analytics. Back at number 1 in the league in pass block win rate, according to ESPN Analytics, which is where it was last year. So, in pass pro, doing what it has done, run blocking, probably want to do a little bit better, but still, if you're in the top third, if you're in the top 10, you're like, okay, you should be effective. The thing is, unlike last year, you have a primary running back in J.K. Dobbins who is averaging north of 4 yards per carry. That's helping this run game be more effective. You're seeing the ability to run downhill a little bit more. And I think when you hear Adam Troutman talk about Dobbins in that way, I mean, if you want to say he was throwing the running backs last year under the bus, I don't think he was. I think he was just offering praise for J.K. Dobbins, and one of those guys who has earned a lot of respect in the locker room pretty quickly. Now you just knock on every surface that you can find for J.K. Dobbins to stay healthy. It's a promising thing that of the 4 free agent signees, the primary 4 free agent signees of this offseason, J.K. Dobbins is the only one whose name is not on the injury report this week. Now, Talanoa Hufanga, he's good to go, listed on the injury report with the chest injury that had him limited on Wednesday. Full go. He's going to be fine. No worries there. The news not as good for Dre Greenlaw and Evan Ingram on Thursday. They both were DNP at practice. So Dre Greenlaw certainly trending toward him missing a 3rd straight game. Dre Greenlaw working out on the side field on Thursday. Evan Ingram not seen on the side field. Justin Sternad went from DNP on Wednesday to practicing on Thursday, dealing with a foot issue, so he's trending in the right direction to play. So, good sign for him. But I see a lot of comments right now coming in about inside linebacker, the obvious concern. And this is where I do wonder what the Chargers' game plan is going to be, because they have not run the football well at all through 2 games. This big story, big pub, has been how well Justin Herbert has played, how effective he's been, how this is in terms of Greg Roman, usually known more for emphasizing the run, taking the shackles off of Justin Herbert and letting him crank it downfield. And in fact, that was something about which J.K. Dobbins was joking a little bit in terms of the Chargers running the football less and passing it more this year without him.
I don't know. I like to say that maybe they let number 27 go. So maybe that's why. I'm just messing around, though. But they just, they see someone on the film and the game plan, and that's just how it goes, They might come out this week trying to run the ball more. Who knows? It's just all about what G-Ro sees over there, and that's them. So I'm just worried about what we're doing over here, and hopefully the defense, gets that handle, and we'll come out victorious.
Yep. So, is this the week the Chargers try to test that against a Broncos D that struggled to defend the run last week against Jonathan Taylor? And then last year, slightly different personnel, no Talanoa Hufanga, different linebacker. You didn't have Alex Singleton. You had Cody Barton instead. But we see Alex Singleton, how he struggled against the run last week when they played the Colts. The film don't lie. All you have to do is look at the big run that Taylor had when DJ Jones misses the tackle in the backfield, and he's in the hole, he fills the gap, and Taylor runs around him. That's bad. That's bad film. That's just, there's no 2 ways about it. So, what do? I mean, he's, I know it's being referenced in the chat room right now. He's got the green dot, and the green dot guy is, the reality is, folks, I know people are calling for a change. The green dot guy is hard to bench. The green dot team captain, coming off of an injury as well, it's hard to bench. And they don't give the green dot out loosey-goosey. That's with thought, and that's with a plan. So that's what that's what I can tell you. You're probably, people are looking for, everyone's looking for a scapegoat, I think, right now. But again, the film was not good, but it's also it is a team game. So there are fingerprints on it. You probably need better from the defensive line as well. I think they're missing Malcolm Roach quite a bit up front too. And although he provided something in the pass rush last year more than you expected, remember, he was signed first and foremost to be an interior presence against the run. That's what he did well in New Orleans. So when you lose him, your depth is hit. It's DJ Jones, and then you've got Eni Uwazurike. Now you got Uwazurike playing more basically than he ever has before, and it's a leap for him. And he's struggling at times as well. So you have the factors of Singleton coming back from a knee injury. You don't have Dre Greenlaw. You don't have Malcolm Roach. All of it coming together. And by the way, you would have liked to have had Drew Sanders, but you don't. And who knows when you're going to get him back. Like John Fox said, I'll have to use that quote, nobody's coming to save us. That's what he would say about his Panthers teams when they get hurt. And the thing is, if you're going to have solutions internally, they can't necessarily be brought up overnight. They're going to have to be developed. I see one that's being brought up. Let me see if I can find the comment here so I can flash it on the screen here. Because it was, there we go. All right. It's time to explore what some of the edge depth can do at inside linebacker. It's a completely different position, but this got desperate fast. What if you lose on another one? And I think it's an interesting notion. And obviously, we remember 2021 when the Broncos got in a spot of bother at inside backer. They traded for Kenny Young, of course, during that season. But this part of the solution ended up being giving Baron Browning some inside backer reps. And that was actually Browning's first chance to play. The guy that I sometimes think of that if you were going to try that with anybody, it would be Q Robinson, simply because there isn't an obvious path to playing time for Q Robinson unless somebody gets injured on the edge. With Dondre Tillman, for example, he's still, again, just as he was last year, on a per-snap basis, he's still one of the most efficient and effective edge rushers in terms of generating pressure. He's doing that again this year. Jonah Ellis is off to a whale of a start this season. He's taken the next step. And of course, you've got two starters. Nick Bonito is number 1 in the league, according to ESPN Analytics, in pass rush win rate. Jonathan Cooper, number 5 in the league among edge rushers in run stop win rate. So you got 4 quality guys there at edge, and that's why Q Robinson, even though he could help you on special teams as well, Q Robinson's probably not getting a jersey as long as those 4 guys are healthy. So I've heard, in other words, I've heard worse ideas rep some than moving Q Robinson inside and seeing what he could do. And again, it's just because you did see it with Baron Browning 4 years ago. It's something creative to get a young player some work, because unless there's a trade, basically unless you traded Dondre Tillman or unless there's an injury, there's not an obvious path to playing time for Q Robinson the way things are because of the quality you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 at edge. It's that good right now. So it's not the worst thing to think about, because sometimes you do sometimes want to think in terms of saying, how do I get my best guys on the field? How do I get you're trying to say, okay, we got to get the best 46 in uniform. How do I get the best 46 in uniform? Because you could say Q is one of the best 46 and he's not in uniform right now because of the overall calculus of trying to put this roster together on game days. That's why, another reason why I wish you just activate everybody on the 53 and go from there, but that's not the way the NFL works. So that's, again, it's not something that is in the, it's not something that I've heard is in the mix. So I just want to make that clear. It's not something that I have heard is being tossed around, but I have heard worse ideas. And again, we did see it with Baron Browning back in 2021, and it was a nice way to get him on the field and get him some reps and allow him to get his feet wet. And then I remember him telling me a season later that he felt like it helped him at edge. And one of the things he said is, like, when you're inside backer, when you're there, things can sometimes come at you a little faster than when they're on the edge. And he felt like it helped him when he got back to the edge, help make him a quicker player. By the way, Browning off to a very nice start in Arizona. He's one of the leaders in the league in pass rush win rate. So again, a lot of quality for the Broncos at their edge room. So there wasn't room for Baron Browning to get snaps here, but you're happy to see what he's doing down in Arizona. No surprise that he's doing pretty well. You just for his sake, you hope he stays healthy, because that was always the thing here, is that he struggled with injuries. Hopefully for his sake, he can stay healthy. I want to see him succeed. Hopefully everyone in Broncos country wants to see him succeed as well. So anyway, that was an interesting game tonight, by the way. Thursday Night Football with Buffalo beating Miami. I caught the first half on and off, watched the second half pretty intently over dinner. Another Broncos reporter was with me at dinner. A little tradition that Chris Thomason of the Denver Gazette and I have at a lot of Thursday night football is, sit down, have some all-you-can-eat sushi not too far from here, put the Thursday night game on an iPad and just kind of chat and talk football, talk Broncos, work and everything, and watch the game. And a lot of fight from Miami tonight. Buffalo not at its best, but good enough. It's sort of the type of effort that you see from teams that are clearly Super Bowl contenders. Just enough. It's the type of game that when you get to that level, it's almost like you know exactly what you need to put out there in a game like that. Just enough against a team like Miami. Mike McDaniel clearly on the hot seat. Some missed opportunities for the Dolphins. It also got me thinking as well that of kind of what's happened since 70-20. Because, of course, we're in week 3, and week 3 2 years ago was that debacle. And that, of course, took the Dolphins to 3-0. And dadgum, after that game, I think he thought of the Dolphins thinking that might be a special season for them incoming, that they might be a Super Bowl contender that year. And then injuries caught up to them in a big way as the season went on. They had a solid 11-6 finish. They lost in the playoffs at Kansas City that frigid night, probably so frigid that they should not have been playing the game that night. It was dangerously cold. There were alerts by the National Weather Service basically saying people should not be outside that night. That's, by the way, the sort of night that if it happens in Denver, they'll close the roof, assuming that it's a retractable roof stadium as the Broncos plan to build. They'll have it open most of the time. That's what I've gathered. But there will be a level of chill, a level of weather where they'll say, close the dang thing. And when it's dangerously cold like that, like I would even say, like, if it's the way it was when the Broncos played the Ravens back in January of 2013, when it was, I believe, 13 degrees, dropping into the single digits, I'd say when it's that level of cold, you would probably see the roof closed. I'm not sure that you'll see a game in Denver played with a temperature lower than 25 degrees again once they build the roof. I say again, starting at the point when they have a stadium with a retractable roof. I think there'll be a level that they don't go below, and that's probably for the best, I'd say. So, but that's when Miami lost. An injury-plagued Dolphins team lost in the playoffs. So the Dolphins finished that year after the 70 burger. They went 8-6, and then they went 8-9 the following year, and now they're 0-3. So you put that together, and that's 16-18 since that day. Dolphins have been very mid and on the decline. And that was a team at that point 3 years ago you thought actually was going into a window of contention. Remember the previous year, the Broncos sent Bradley Chubb to the Dolphins and got a first-round pick back. Of course, the first-round pick that was dealt to the New Orleans Saints for Sean Payton. So Miami was in the business of trading for a star player from a team like the Broncos that was clearly in sell mode not long before. That was where the Dolphins stood. And now here we are in 2025, and the Dolphins look like a rudderless ship and look poised potentially to mash the reset button. I mean, this could be a team that maybe jettisons its coaching staff and maybe just starts all over again this coming off season. And I think we recall back in around 2019 when it seemed like they were tearing down almost intentionally trying to have a bad season and get the number one pick, and then almost in tank mode, and they didn't quite do that. And of course they ended up drafting Tua Tagovailoa instead of Joe Burrow, who they would have gotten if they'd had the number one overall pick. And they went through a pretty thorough rebuilding. They moved on from Brian Flores and ended up hiring Mike McDaniel. But they went through this pretty thorough and deep rebuilding. And it appears that unless there is a dramatic turnaround, all Miami is going to get is a couple of wild card losses out of it. And that's it. And now they're probably going to punch the reset button again. I mean, it just gets you thinking, right, about how, how you can have all this that you put into it, put a lot of years into what seemed to be a very smart and very carefully crafted rebuild, and yet it doesn't get you all that much. Part of the reason it doesn't get you all that much is that you have a pretty good quarterback who unfortunately has injuries in the case of Tua Tagovailoa, but also just the fact that you say he's pretty good. He's not elite. He's pretty good. He's a notch below. You've got an elite quarterback elsewhere in your division. That's the guy in the team against whom you went tonight with the Dolphins facing the Buffalo Bills. And in terms of getting over the hump to win into the division, that's the hump they've never been able to get over. And, you hope it doesn't work out that way for the Broncos is what I'm saying. Like that's where you hope Bo Nix can keep ascending. But it's also sort of something you think about here in this division, because you've got Patrick Mahomes and you've got Justin Herbert, and you just got swept by the Chargers last year. Now we see the Chiefs are off to a bad start. We'll see if that bad start ends up manifesting into a lousy season, or we'll see if they end up overcoming that. But this is really an important game. I don't think it's must win. I'm not going to say must win. But this is kind of an important game for determining how the race is going to go, but even an important game in terms of, where sort of what this year looks like in terms of the Broncos window. Because if you win this game and you're 2-1, then everything's in front of you, and I think everything's wide open. If you are 1-2 and 2 games behind the Chargers, who have 3 games in the division already. By the way, I took a look at teams that started 3-0 in the division, and the track record of those teams that go 3-0 with 3 division wins in weeks 1 through 3. It's extremely stellar, at least in terms of not only stacking up division titles, but stacking up like 12-win seasons. I'll have something on that in my pregame numbers piece at denversports.com. But if the Chargers get this win and then keep their momentum, it's probably, you may be looking at a more likely scenario being wild card unless the Chargers have a collapse. You may That may be what you're looking at here. Plenty of time, though, to go in the season. But this is a game that may well determine the Broncos' outlook the rest of the way. It's not a must-win, but there's a lot on the line. I just can't say week 3 is a must-win because there's too much that can happen in the course of a season. Too many games in the future. I mean, Justin Herbert could get injured in 3 weeks, and that could send the Chargers spiraling and completely change the context of the division race. You just don't know. There's too many things that can go on. So, anyway. But it's definitely, I think, a fork in the road game for the Broncos in terms of like what their developmental arc in terms of their path toward contention looks like. I think a win maybe gets them on the express lane a little bit. A loss maybe puts them on a little bit more of a detour. A win, I think, maybe accelerates their path to where they want to go. A loss maybe makes them take a more roundabout route. Because a loss, you might be sitting there at 2-3 going to London. Now, that still means you might be 5-3 at the end of October, but that might be a 5-3 where you trail a 7-1 Chargers team by then. And then you go into November feeling like, okay, we got these division wins. Then I think you're talking about must wins at midseason. Then I think the discussion changes to must rather than, okay, let's get this win. Just different set of circumstances there. So anyway, Denver football after dark here on this Thursday night. Rep, by the way, they were that you're referring to 0-4 and went to the Super Bowl. That was 92 that they were 0-4. They won the division that year, but they did not go to the Super Bowl. They actually started, I believe, 4-0 in 94, the year they went to a Super Bowl. They got off to a great start. 92 was Bobby Ross's first year when they started 0-4, and they came back and won the division. One of the reasons they were able to come back, of course, and it's funny because I mentioned, something could happen, like an injury. Well, the thing that happened that aided the Chargers that year was John Elway getting injured for the Broncos. And, of course, that led to, for part of the time, the Tommy Maddox, Sean Moore alternating plays for a bit. Recall, especially most famously in that Cowboy game, those who were around back then and remember the 92 season. So, but that's an example of how an injury to a team that looks like it's in good shape to claim a division, claim a playoff spot, can completely change the landscape. And that injury to John Elway that year changed the landscape of the AFC West race, changed the landscape for Dan Reeves. He was already, there was a little bit of thin ice certainly with Pat Bowlen anyway, but the John Elway injury and the subsequent descent for the Broncos in 92 has hastened his demise and led to his dismissal right after the season. And, of course, they hired Wade Phillips after that. So, anyway, yeah. Nate bringing up the Chargers schedule. Yeah, that's actually something, I even mentioned it on one of the off-season shows when I was looking at the Broncos and their outlook. And talking, and I think I even mentioned that there was a pretty good chance that the Broncos could fall a decent amount of games behind the Chargers, especially if they lose this game, and that you're going to maybe have to trust trust the arc of the season. Because after this, for the Chargers, it's at the Giants, Commanders at home, at Miami, which, I mean, they might be in some disarray by then. We'll see. You saw tonight that they can put together a good performance, but things could get out of control down there. Indianapolis at home. Certainly the Chargers will be glad to have that game at home, but that looks like a toughie. Minnesota at home, which suddenly doesn't look daunting for the Chargers at all. And then at Tennessee, Pittsburgh at home, at Jacksonville before their Week 12 bye. Right now, they would, because the Washington game is at home, the Chargers would basically be favored in every game up until their bye. Doesn't mean they'll win all of them, but they could be expected to. Certainly, I think it doesn't matter. I think they will. I don't think they'll be 11-0. I think they'll drop a game or two. But I do think a realistic expectation for the Chargers, if they get this game on Sunday, this could be. I think this game, Washington, and maybe Indianapolis, but I'd say probably this one and Washington probably are the two toughest games for the Chargers here. If they get this one, LA, I think, has a good chance to be 9-2 or 10-1 when they hit their bye in Week 12. But, okay, after their bye, this is their closing 6. Las Vegas at home, Philadelphia at home, at Kansas City, at Dallas. And at Dallas is always going to be, if Dak Prescott's healthy, at Dallas is always going to be a tough game. And I think you kind of saw it on Sunday against the Giants. The Giants are a shaky team, yes, but you're going to have to put up a lot of points to beat the Cowboys a lot of weeks. Dallas is going to put some points on the board against almost anybody. You're probably going to have to put up 30-some to win on the Cowboys. They're going to light up the scoreboard. Houston at home, and then at the Broncos. So it's a tough run-in for the Chargers. All 6 of those games after the bye look like they're going to be against teams that should be in the playoff conversation, whereas in the first 11, I'd say Chiefs, Raiders, Broncos, Commanders, Colts, Vikings, Steelers. I'd say probably, 6 to 8, not all, but 6 to 8 against teams in the playoff conversation, but not as rigorous as what they're going to face down the stretch. So I think you're going to have to kind of trust the season a little bit with the Chargers and say, okay, they should get theirs, even if they don't get some losses early. So, but they're a very good team. Jim Harbaugh is objectively a good coach. Jim Harbaugh has never had a losing season as an NFL head coach. That's a fact. He and his staff will find a way to wring the most out of their team more often than not. Now, yes, we know eventually he's very high strung. Eventually he's going to wear on people. I think it's true that Jim Harbaugh probably has a shelf life. He did eventually in San Francisco. They went 8-8 his last season, and then he moved on to Michigan. And one could say that there's a very good chance that Sean Payton is still coaching the Broncos after Jim Harbaugh is no longer coaching the Chargers. That is a potential and possibly likely outcome here for these two stewardships. But while Jim Harbaugh is the coach of the Los Angeles Chargers, you can expect them to be a very good team, a very successful team. Do they go all the way? Well, that's another thing. If you talk about ownership and having and needing that, well, we all know that the Chargers have never won a world championship, period, but they haven't won it under Spanos ownership. They didn't win it under Gene Klein ownership before the Spanoses, and you could say Gene Klein's ownership is a reason why they didn't win, because famously, back in 1981, they had contract disputes with both John Jefferson and Fred Dean when they were right there in their imperial phase of their Air Coryell attack. And the result was both John Jefferson and Fred Dean got traded. Fred Dean got traded to the San Francisco 49ers, Dean a future Hall of Famer, and the 49ers won the Super Bowl. Dean was kind of the final piece of their puzzle, as it turned out, and John Jefferson was traded to the Green Bay Packers. And you could say that the unwillingness to pay those two players may have cost the Chargers a Super Bowl. They did manage to replace Jefferson pretty well with Wes Chandler, but they certainly did not replace Fred Dean as a pass rusher. And the Chargers kind of, after that season, began a slow fade back in the AFC standings in the 1980s. The point being, you can look at the Chargers as being one of those teams when Sean Payton talks about 20 that don't have the ownership. You could say, look at the Chargers as one of those teams, perhaps. Not historically, even predating Spanos family ownership, which took root in the mid-1980s. So, anyway. How do we win this game with inside linebacker injury? Silent Sticks checking in. Appreciate you, Silent Sticks. Thanks for that. Well, let's start here. First of all, you're going to need support from the defensive backfield. One thing that has helped get by with the inside linebacker injuries and with Singleton kind of struggling, Talanoa Hufanga has been terrific the last two games. And he's the first responder that Sean Payton talks about. But Hufanga's been cleaning up some messes all over the place. So that is one way that will help. Another way is if the Chargers continue their passing fancy, that can play into the Broncos' strengths in the secondary. Pat Surtain, he was full practice. He looks good to go. Now, it's coming off a game where he was tested by the Colts, by Daniel Jones. I would also say that on some of those passes he gave up, the coverage was tight. Some throws into some tight windows. It's not like he's allowing a bunch of yardage after the catch. Like, you'd worry more if there are receptions and there's a huge cushion and there's a lot of yardage after the catch. If it's a needle threaded into a tight window and he's minimizing the damage after that, okay, you can kind of live with that. So Hufanga's been terrific. So that's going to help you get it done. You've got to be careful with the pass rush because of how effective Justin Herbert is as a runner. So you have to be mindful. Your edges can't get out of position, and this is another thing. So you got to watch it with the edges. In other words, you've got to use inside moves and not just go speed to the outside. You've got to use some stunts. You've got to stunts and twists. You've got to try to generate pressure up the middle, A and B gaps. That's where you can actually discombobulate Justin Herbert. So watch for pressure from there as well. That being said, their offensive line has adapted to the loss of Rashawn Slater nicely. Joe Alt has slid over to the left side, and there's been no drop off. It's been their offensive line still very, very good. there's a path to win this game. The other thing I'll mention, Silent Sticks, and it's complementary football, old cliche. You need some long drives from the offense. The offense needs to control the tempo, control the pace, and minimize defensive exposure. Some good, solid 7 to 10 play drives. And to go back to the slide that I had at the start of the show, and I put it right there at the little screen capture from last year against the Chargers. Run it. That's why I opened with J.K. Dobbins, who's been effective, 139 yards and 4.6 yards per carry in the first 2 games. Run the ball. Control the tempo. Stay on schedule. Don't fall behind schedule on first down. Extend drives. Minimize defensive exposures. That is a path to victory. It's not just about supporting the inside backers and making sure they're not as exposed. It's making sure the defense is not exposed as a group. And that, of course, also means protecting the football. You've had 5 giveaways in 2 games. That leads the NFL. You're 28th, tied for 28th heading into this game in turnover margin. That won't do. Got to improve that. So, all these things. That's how you get it done. How should we expect Bonix to play when Chargers play live match coverage last year? Should have won, but ran away from the run. Well, there you go. And that's what I mean. And so you stick with the run. It was working early. It was working early in that game. So stick with it. I mentioned earlier in the show, Silent Sticks, that the Broncos, they are middle of the pack in the NFL in running on 1st and 10 with in the first half and then the second half when it's a 1-score game. So in other words, when I'm throwing out 2-score game, when it's a 2-score game and you're in pass mode. So in normal situations, normal 1st and 10s, they are 16th in the league in run percentage. So, okay, that's fine. They're average in terms of how much they run the ball. Let's see if they can get that up a little bit. Instead of running it on 1st and 10, instead of running it 52%, let's see if they can get to 60%. So, and I'm Michael Ronquillo. Appreciate you, Michael. Thank you. And yes, run the football. Run the football is a must. They have got to do it. They have got to run the ball. I mean, that's why, I'm going to sound like a broken record, y'all. They've got to run the ball. They can. They showed it last year, and it's a good Chargers front, no doubt. But here's the thing. We talk about good defensive fronts. It's a good defensive front that they saw in week 1 in the Tennessee Titans. And for 3 quarters, the Titans had the upper hand. And then in the 4th quarter, the Broncos did. Eventually, they wore them down. Eventually, the Broncos started imposing their will. It was better last week against the Colts. There was a bit more game-long commitment to balance. I like the idea that they had at the start of the game to say, okay, we're going to run the first 3 plays. That's how we're going to start. Of course, they got a first down on the first play, but just stick with it. Like, this is our plan. We're going to establish this right away. Now, you probably can't do it this week because you did it last week. So maybe you can't be so obvious about it. But run the ball. You have an effective offensive line. It's better than most. It's not perfect, but it's better than most in the league. Take advantage of that. You've paid a lot of money to this line. Let them earn their money. And oh, by the way, they want to do that. They want to go downhill. Those guys, they want to be going forward. They want to be going downhill. Let them do what they can do best. Honestly, like Adam Troutman sounds excited, gets a little kind of gets a little spark when he talks about, run blocking. Those guys, they want that opportunity. They want to take control. They want to run the ball. Part of the reason they want to do it is because they know that and they saw it last week, when they got going, they had the Colts on the run. I mean, you think back to that drive at the end, before the spike and before the face mask penalty, the twin bungles, unfortunately, by two guys who were having good games. Dobbins had a really good game until the spike. Troutman was having a good under-the-radar game, doing the dirty work until the face mask. That's the thing kind of frustrates you when you watch that. It's like you had the two guys that they were putting in the work. And then back-to-back, it squelched momentum. When Dobbins ripped off that run and got to the 20, personally, I thought the Broncos were winning this game because they were driving and they were exerting their will. You felt it. And then, alas, so it went. Craig Hart, if you watch Prime Vision with Next Gen Stats alternate feed, many viewing angles. Craig, a lot of games I do on Thursday night. I do enjoy it. This game, I'll admit I didn't. Some games I do. Usually just sort of depends on, it honestly depends on how much I'm able to pay attention to the game. Like if I'm able to focus and lock in on a Thursday night game, Craig, I will watch the Prime Vision. I do love the up top angle, and I do love seeing how, all the motion and all that. And I love the arrows and all that. It's fun to watch. This week I didn't. So anyway, I haven't posted a lot of the Greenlaw comments in the chat on the show. I will tell you, I see them, I hear them, I read them, and I do get everybody's frustration. I understand that. I understand the skepticism. I am not going to sit here and tell everyone in Broncos country not to have a level of frustration about the state of the injuries with the players that have come in. Because right now, you're potentially looking at 2 of the 4 guys that were brought in free agency with injury histories not playing this game. And you are right to be frustrated with that. I can't tell you any other way to feel right now. You just hope it gets better. You hope that what the Broncos are doing now, which is they're trying to play the long game with Greenlaw, basically by taking their time with him in bringing him back from this quad injury, they're rolling the dice that he'll be able to play more down the stretch. If he plays 12 or 13 games after this without being injured, it'll work out okay. It's a success. But we're not going to know that for a while. So we're not going to be able to sit here and say, "Oh, it worked out." We're not going to know that. So how big a loss is it not having Khalil Mack for the Chargers? It's massive, I think, not having him. Now, their secondary is still in good shape, and their secondary is what really can cause some problems. But losing Khalil Mack, I mean, all you have to do is look at his history against the Broncos. I mean, the ancient history, of course, is going back to 2015 when he ate the lunch of Michael Schofield in that infamous game when he played for the Raiders, the game where the Broncos settled for field goals instead of touchdowns in the first half, and that proved costly. But then you go through the games here. for Khalil Mack. I've got him in front of me here. So let's see. No sacks last year. One sack in one sack in 2023. One sack in the 2022 games, and then he had a sack in 2019. He had in the two 2017 games. He had 3 sacks. In the two 2016 games, he had 2 sacks. In the two 2015 games, of course, 5 sacks. I mean, that's 5, 7, 10, 11, 12, 13. That's 13 sacks over the years, and 13 sacks in 15 games. But 5 in one game. That's still pretty good. So anytime you take that out of the lineup, you're breathing a little bit of a sigh of relief, even though this is not the Khalil Mack of his salad days. He's still somebody that for whom you always account when he's out there. You're always taking note of him. But this is also, as I watch it, this is also a bit more of an inside-out attack. You're more worried about what they bring from the interior than on the edge. So it's not something where you can fall asleep and breathe too much of a sigh of relief because Khalil Mack's out. They still have plenty. This is a big challenge. This is a particularly big challenge for the interior 3 on the offensive line. So I think it's a big challenge for Luke Wattenberg and Ben Powers. They're going to have to be on their P's and Q's in this game. So anyway, Denver football after dark here on this Thursday. And I appreciate you joining me. I like being able to do this on an earlier time on a Thursday, by the way, because I actually like the fact that I'm not going to be up until 3 a.m. for a change. It's actually pretty nice. I'll have a little something more on Friday, a little shorter piece you'll be able to find on the Denver Sports YouTube channels as well. There will be a Friday night show coming, probably a shorter show on Friday night before I head off to Los Angeles for a little programming note as well. So I'm on a flight Saturday morning, and then I'll be on my way. To just reset the injury report for the Chargers. Ladd McConkey full practice on Thursday after being DNP on Wednesday. He had a biceps issue. Will Dissly, who had his best game ever way back in 2018 against the Broncos at tight end, he's been DNP for the last 2 days with a knee injury. Diane Henley, linebacker, he was ill on Wednesday, DNP, limited on Thursday. But the fact that he was back out there, at least limited, probably as trending toward playing. Elijah Molden, DNP, last 2 days with a hamstring injury for the Chargers. So that's the big news today was Ladd McConkey being back to full work on Thursday for the Chargers. So you're not going to get the break of Ladd McConkey not being out there. It looks like he's going to be good to go. So, and Ladd McConkey is becoming one of those guys who appears as if he's going to cause a lot of problems for the Broncos over the years. So, yeah, sorry, touchdown Bo Nix. Yeah, he was DNP Wednesday and not DNP Thursday. So that's something to consider here. So big challenge with Ladd McConkey there. So appreciate all of you joining me here for this edition of Denver Football After Dark. Like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss any of these videos. Appreciate all of you chiming in on the conversation. And like I said, I'm not going to I can't, there are times when I'll tell you when I want to kind of calm everybody down and say, okay, because I do like to say, that when it's bad, it's not always as bad as it seems, and when it's good, it's not always as good as it seems. But I do get everybody's frustration with injured players. The one thing I would say is, like, just don't try not to make it personal with the players. I mean, with Dre, I mean, when we leave practice, we walk past the side field to go to the media room there's a media room for a few of us reporters, and there's a desk where we have our desks, and it's where I sit and work for about an hour and write my stories and edit and whatever. And so we walk past the side field, and we see where the injured players are working out. We see Dre Greenlaw, like, where he's working out during practice, and he's working his tail off to get back in rehab and rehabbing and get back. So, I know there's frustration with him with the fact that he's not back, but I mean, believe me, nobody's more frustrated with the fact that he's not out there than number 57. So, try not to make it personal on him and any of these guys injured. I mean, believe me, they are the most frustrated people in the world about them not being able to play. So that's the one that's just the only message that I would have for everybody. Try not to, just try to be kind to those guys, and just remember that I mean, I do see Dre, working his tail off. He's doing that every day. He wants to be out there, hopefully when he gets back, for his sake, that he'll stay back and you guys will get to see the kind of player he is, because, I mean, he's had a long go of it. I mean, he's now missed because he only played 2 games last year. So if he misses this game, I mean, this is going to be 18 out of 20 that he's missed in Super Bowl 58. I mean, man, that is just freaking rough. So I think he's itching to get back badly. So hopefully for the Broncos' sake, we'll get to see that, and hopefully for his sake, we'll get to see that, because man, he was fun to watch before that injury. I mean, I remember being at Super Bowl 58 watching him play. He was all over the place, and then that Achilles, it's just been unfortunate. So anyway, that's me on my soapbox here at the end of this show. So appreciate all of you joining me here for this Thursday night edition of Denver Football After Dark. Like, comment, share, subscribe, all the things. And I'll see you again Friday night as we dive a little bit more into this. And yeah, I guess that he doesn't talk about injuries. Touchdown Bo Nix. I do get that. I wish we could have a little more information about the injuries, and then we could kind of have a little bit more insight and a little bit more clarity. But the way Sean Payton views it is that it's a competitive advantage in his eyes to not say anything. Me, I take the side of Gary Kubiak during the 2015 season with the quarterback situation, when he would tell the team, whether it was Brock Osweiler or Peyton Manning starting, he'd tell them in the meeting room on Monday, and then he would tell the media, and that was it. He wouldn't play the competitive advantage game. What he wanted to do was have clarity, so there would be no questions about it. And I kind of agree with that. Have clarity, and then just nobody asks about it, and then you move on. So thank you for coming to my TED Talk about how coaches should handle injuries at press conferences. That's just my take, and Gary Kubiak was pretty successful. So your mileage may vary. Anyway, that's Denver Football After Dark for this Thursday night. Appreciate all of you joining me here, whether it was live or on delay. And if you know anyone who'd enjoy this sort of Broncos chat, tell your friends about this channel, and I'll have more on Friday. So thanks for watching. Take care, and I will see you next time. Bye for now. I'll find the slide eventually. you.